Hello, my beautiful work kids. How are you doing? So this week I wanted to talk about my theory of what I think it's the cause, and this is my personal opinion, the cause of suffering for most people. And I'm going to be talking about conditioning and how self-awareness or lack thereof can cause you to suffer, and how if you're not aware of this conditioning, it could be making decisions for you in your life and affecting you. So if you want to find out how you can be, without knowing, affected by your environment, stay tuned. So think about it. We're born perfect. We're born with possibilities. We're innocent. When we're babies, we even, suck our big toe, our foot toes, and we just scream if we want to, and we don't have anything stopping us. And through time, until we are 8, we experience the world through feeling. So we haven't developed our own critical thinking, and we experience the world through feeling. So what that means too is that while we're growing up, while we're born without inhibition, without that inner self-critic, we start as a toddler, as we're growing, the adults or caretakers in our life start telling us what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. We experience things according to our environment, according to our culture. So we end up absorbing a lot from our parents, from how they deal with conflict, how they deal with struggles or challenges, because we're observing the world around us. So you can tell, and I don't know if you've noticed, a little kid, don't do that, or you don't do that, or you're doing a behavior that you don't want your kids to learn, and you just tell them you don't do that. They will learn by observing. They won't learn by you telling them not to do it. They will watch you. A lot of the beliefs we hold as adults come from the beliefs our parents taught us, or the school they sent us, or the teachers. And these beliefs become our own. Patterns of behavior we learn from observing the adults where we're growing up. And I don't know if you've noticed, we even learn mannerisms, way we express ourselves, ways we perceive the world, or even sayings, the sayings they keep repeating to us when we're growing up. We start absorbing them and taking them as our own. This is my personal opinion on the theory that we are a product of our conditioning. And unless we are self-aware and proactively take changes to adjust those beliefs or those patterns or those behaviors that don't help us to achieve the best version of ourselves or our best life. So if you think about a timeline, you're born without inhibition, without any of these patterns or beliefs. But as you're growing up, you observe and you start learning, feeling the world around you, the culture around you, the example, patterns and beliefs of the people around you. So until you're 8, you start thinking, right? You start expressing yourself and seeing more how the world operates around you. And then you become a teenager, and that's when innocence is gone. And unless it was taken away from you when you were still a toddler. But when you're a teenager, that's what makes it so difficult, because you see the world how it really is, and then you see yourself in it, and it makes it it brings a lot of conflict within you, because you're trying to figure out who you are and what you're going to do with your life, and you start to see that the reality as it is around you, like the adults around you, and you start to see how who you believed were your world and they were perfect, you start to see their flaws and their mistakes and everything. And everything starts becoming confusing and you start having some awakenings. And you keep growing up, and when we're young, we're still developing our self-awareness, what we want. Our brain hasn't developed that long-term understanding of consequences, and that's why when we are young, we are a little reckless and we are just spontaneous because the brain hasn't developed that long-term view of the world, and that happens until we're around 25. And then we start to see the consequences or the reality of how the decisions we made when we were younger will affect us in the long term. So why am I sharing with you this timeline? Because I want to bring to your awareness that some people live in denial and don't realize that they're just a product of conditioning. They're just a product of their parents. And until you become self-aware through introspection and knowing yourself, you will be able to spot those patterns and then let go of those that don't serve you or conflict with who you want to be. And that's why a lot of people never come to this realization, or they kind of see it but are unable to free themselves, because it is challenging. It's all we've ever known, and it's all that has made us feel safe, and it's very hard to get out of. But this is a cycle, especially if you see in your family things that are dysfunctional, or you see patterns of people who are not confident or keep repeating stories from their past generation where everyone never accomplished their dreams, or and they keep sabotaging each other, or patterns of, for example, I noticed on my mom's side there was a lot of women putting women down. Women were seen as undesirable, and you start to see these patterns and you are able to free yourself and you're willing to make progressive changes. Remember, we're striving for progress, not perfection. Gradual changes, baby steps, because we've been thinking, making decisions, behaving from these patterns, from these beliefs that we learn, and for years. So it is going to take time to free yourself from them, because that's all we've known for years. So it's hard to just have that radical change. Of course, there's people who are the exception, but give yourself that time, that progress, that baby steps, and just focus on progressing. And this might sound a little silly, but another way I spotted quickly how we're all product of conditioning was as simple as seeing my cats. I have two cats, one who was a rescue, and they told me that she had been through traumatic events because she was on the street and she was being forced to breed and things like that. So I can see how, even though now she's in a healthy and stable environment where she's accepted and I let her do her thing, she still has some that conditioning where when I touch her, she jumps even though she knows I'm not going to hurt her. Or when she hears a sound that's too loud, her eyes open. And that's being embedded in her because of her experiences. And my other cat, who I adopted as almost newborn baby, 3 months I think, and I brought it straight from the shelter, and he hasn't had any traumatic experiences. He's most trusting and loving and less fearful. So how can we stop this cycle, this dysfunctional cycle that keeps being transmitted from parents to children and then to their children's children? To cure this malady that keeps cultures and societies and families sick, the first step is to not be silent, to speak about things that have happened. And sometimes you can't with your own family because they get defensive and they don't want to admit to the story, and It's something that's unspoken about, whatever happened. But you can find people who are aligned in your mindset, who aspire the same things. Talk about your story, talk about what happened, and validate those experiences as a learning experience, not to poke on an old wound or stay in a trauma story, because it can recreate trauma. And if this is you, I recommend you watching my video on letting go of the past. The second step is to get validation, right? Because sometimes things happen and we don't feel like we can talk about them because we don't want to offend our parents, because just talking about them makes them uncomfortable, makes them sad, and we're trying to protect them. So we stay silent because we don't want to make them feel bad, right? But then that emotional baggage comes, we're carrying their pain and we are carrying our own. We're carrying all this pain with us. And you can also self-validate your experiences. You can acknowledge what happened. Hiding your pain, hiding things that happened to protect your parents can end up hurting yourself and only yourself. See your experiences. The third step is awareness of contrast, which I learned from Esther Hicks. See your experiences. If they haven't been great, if they've been traumatic or hurtful, see them as contrast, as just a way of experiencing life and knowing exactly what you don't want. It's thanks to these experiences that we have desires. New desires are born. And if we hadn't had them, we wouldn't have these desires. The next step is to recognize these patterns, to recognize these beliefs, to recognize that conditioning, because it could be keeping you stuck. So one way to spot them is to journal and ask yourself, what did my parents do? How did they handle stress? What did they do when they were upset? How did they handle life? How did they cope? What were their beliefs? And then after you write that down, spot if any of those are some that you absorb and just automatically taking as your own that could be affecting you. The next step is to have the desire to change that dysfunction, to end it. It all starts with the intention. So don't get overwhelmed. Just having the intention, things are going to start showing up. You're going to keep having little awakenings and little miracles of awareness, of self-awareness, and start thinking, wait, where did I learn this thought? Where did this thought come from? Why do I think like this? Why do I think of myself like this? Why am I making this decision? And all your behaviors and patterns come and originate from conditioning. The desire to change could be when you're experiencing, for example, if your parents criticize you a lot, now you probably are criticizing yourself when you make a mistake, and you, in your thoughts, you're talking to yourself like your parents did. And when you notice that, just say, oh, I'm talking to myself like my parents did, but now I'm choosing not to talk to myself like that, and I'm not going to think that, and I'm going to replace this thought for this other one. And I really wanted to share this with you because when we are the ones in our families who are the different ones, who think different, who don't follow the hidden rules that they have placed through generations, you shouldn't do that. And it's just these silent rules of expectations and things like that. And warning here, when you are the crazy one in your family, you might be the sane one, because you are calling them out. You are talking about things that, these hidden rules, quiet rules, these expectations, you are talking about things that happen that they don't want to talk about. And you are the rebel one, the crazy one, who's not following that hidden rules, those dysfunction that is expected to keep going, right? So I wanted to read to you something beautiful I found online by Jeff Brown, and he wrote, and this is To All My Crazy Ones by Jeff Brown. It has been my experience that the one that families call crazy one is often the sane one. This is particularly true in very dysfunctional families, where ideas of healthy functioning are turned upside down. These families members often repress their authentic feelings and turn against anyone who reminds them of their unresolved issues and patterns. As a result, truth speakers, the ones who refuse to contain their feelings, those who challenge and humanize this toxic status quo, are often scapegoated and vilified, made to feel crazy by those who lack the courage and insight to see beyond their family's madness. If you have been labeled the crazy one, take heart. You are truly not alone. Most great creators and paradigm shifters were met with fiery resistance by those afraid to grow. Whatever you do not allow your voice to fade away in the face of their messaging. Your voice, your vision, your ways of being live at the heart of your unique soul's journey and are the key to collective transformation. No one has the right to bury them under a bushel of shame. No one. And remember, what is crazy to the unconscious person is often brilliantly sane to one who's in awakening. To one who's awakening. Without you, we are lost. Blessed be the crazy ones. Don't forget that I also offer free resources. Below there's the links for my top 7 personal development books, a quiz that it gives you a customized guide that to match your answers. And if you want to learn more about my programs, you can visit bossofmyfeelings.com for more emotional intelligence tools.